tell you a story about my brother. Um, my little brother, Paul, he was a twin. Him and his brother, Josh, are 15 years younger than me. So we kind of grew up at like different periods of time in my family. And they were only 3.5 years old when I joined the Army just after I turned 18 years old. I talked to him incrementally over the years, but the differences in our ages and the distance from me being in the Army for 5 years, they kept that distance and that relationship kind of stunted, I guess. It kept us from being close. Um, but there were things about my brother Paul that did really stand out to me. I had grown up helping my dad a lot. My dad ran his own business. He was a school teacher as well. He did construction work, and my dad was a handy guy. He could fix just about anything, like he would take any sort of fix-it job, did a lot of building maintenance, a lot of repair stuff, taught me to work on cars and stuff when I was a kid. And after I joined the Army, somewhat to get away from working for my dad all the time, my little brother Paul kind of picked up the torch. He used to go to work with my dad all the time. He learned a lot from my dad. And I feel like my brother Paul and I were the most like our dad in the family, but there were also differences. Well, I think my brother Paul was a better student when he was in high school than I was. He finished high school stronger than I did. And somehow I got to a PhD, but I was not on that trajectory originally. Um, but Paul, I mean, he was a smart kid, and he worked hard, and he learned all that from my dad. And anyhow, he never went to college or anything. He uh, he used those fix-it skills. Like he eventually got a job at a gas station chain, and he started out just working at the gas station. And then they appreciated like he could fix anything. And eventually they had him as like kind of their main maintenance person. Like if something broke, especially if it was something complicated, they would send my brother all over the state, all over the region to solve complex problems, to fix things. And this high school educated kid, I mean, he was so good at it. Um, and yeah, at some point, my brother Paul started drinking. I guess they really started drinking, like even in high school, him and my brothers and sisters, like they all kind of dabbled in substance use pretty early, kind of dealing with some family trauma. I don't want to go too far into that. It's not super relevant why this happened. Just some of my siblings fell into drinking and some drug use. And some of us, maybe we tried it out later, but it didn't stick, or, maybe we even have an aversion to it like I do. Um, but yeah, my brother Paul, at some point in his job, he was going to an assignment and he drank before he went there for some reason. And he got a DUI for driving this company truck to this job. And by all accounts, my brother was very well liked by his employers, and he was a very useful employee. And so they tried to keep him on board. They tried to, find a way to work with him, like maybe somebody else would drive him to places or whatever. But my brother, like my father and I, he had his pride and everything. And I got some of this from him. He was ashamed of the experience. He basically had a really tough time emotionally recovering from that. And I don't really understand why he did this, but he quit his job and he just disappeared. He did show up occasionally at my sister's. He apparently would see my younger sister and sleep on her couch and stuff, but he slept on other people's couches. We rarely saw him. And he continued to drink a lot. I think he also did some drugs, but I know the drinking was like the big thing. And we didn't see him for years. For years, my brother was gone. We all kind of went on with our lives and everything. And in 2020, right at the start of the COVID pandemic, my sister Katrina called me and said that my brother Paul had turned up in a hospital in Burnsville, Minnesota. And he wasn't doing very well. He had liver cirrhosis at that point, and he was unconscious when they brought him in. Like, nobody honestly knew who he was at first, but somebody that worked at the hospital actually recognized him and knew my brother Josh, his twin. And so they were able to reach my brother Josh, and Josh and my sister got in touch with me. I was living in Nebraska at the time. I immediately went to see my brother, and I thought he was going to die. I went to see my brother in the hospital, and the next day when I got to see him, he actually was awake and in a pretty good mood. He looked kind of handsome. Even he had a full head of hair. He had more hair than I do, and he had grown a thick, full beard. And somebody had definitely cleaned him up. Like, his beard was very nicely trimmed, and his hair was combed, and he looked pretty happy. Yeah. My sister was already there, and I believe my uncle was there at that time. And yeah, I was able to talk to my brother for the first time in years, and he was generally in pretty good spirits. They had been treating him. He was feeling better that day, and I think he was really surprised. Like, people kept coming in and out, and I think he felt like, wow, people love me, like he thought that, I think he thought that he would be rejected or that nobody would be there. And I stayed there for a long time. And even myself, like, I saw people from our family that I hadn't seen in months or even years come in and out, say hi, tell them they loved him, and, wished him the best and everything. And it seemed at the time like he might actually get better, like he was responding well to treatment and everything. But I guess we also knew, like, cirrhosis of the liver. I mean, like, you get to this point, the odds aren't in your favor. Cirrhosis is when the liver gets past the point of healing. But like I said, he was responding to treatment. And spent the day with him. And yeah. So at the end of the day, we had seen a lot of family members. I had to leave. It was the end of visiting hours. And that was on March 30th. And the very next day, that hospital and several others in the area, they locked down access due to the COVID pandemic. People were dying at large numbers at that point. So only my sister Katrina was allowed to come in and see my brother every day after that. So that was actually the last time I saw my brother alive. But he did continue to get better. My brother got better in the hospital for like another week, and then they moved him to hospice. I believe that was in St. Paul. And again, lockdown. Only my sister Katrina was allowed to see him. I'd gone home to my family, my wife and kids in Nebraska. But my brother had a phone in his room. I could call him every day, which I didn't call him every day, but I called him. And I reconnected with my little brother. And what I remember about those conversations is he just sounded so normal. He started to like think about like the previous few years, and, he started to like appreciate, like people really cared about him, that I cared about him. And he became optimistic. Like, he talked about, I just have to be sober for 6 months, and then I can, get a liver transplant, and I can get started again on my life and everything. And I remember that my brother wanted better food. I remember he specifically said I just want a cheeseburger. And so I told my brother that I would get him a cheeseburger if he as soon as he got out of hospice. I was like, I'll get you a cheeseburger. And he really did. He seemed to do really well for quite a while. It seemed like my little brother was going to get better and he was going to be part of the family again. And there was a lot of hope. And then on May 27th, the morning of May 27th, 2020, my sister Katrina called me in the morning, and she was already at hospice, and she said they'd called her that morning to say that Paul was not waking up and his vitals looked terrible. Like just overnight, he just took a really big turn for the worse. And she was in the room, and I could hear my brother's breathing was very irregular. Like I would hear him breathe like a breath, and then there'd just be long pauses. And my sister was definitely very distraught, and stayed on the phone with her for a while. I said goodbye to my brother, and I called another sister of mine, let her know what was up, and I called my parents, who were unfortunately hours away from hospice from where my brother was. So they couldn't get to him. They lived in northern Minnesota, and they were not young at the time, so they just couldn't get there. And then we just waited. And at around 3:00 that afternoon, my sister called me, and my brother was like very, very much at the end. And she let me know, he had, when he passed away. And yeah, that was it. About 3:00 in the afternoon, May 27th, 2020, my brother Paul passed away from liver cirrhosis due to excessive drinking. And so this is one of the reasons, a reason why I definitely have very strong feelings about not drinking. It is not the reason why I stopped even casual drinking, but it's definitely a big factor. Something that I thought about a lot at the time was, my family does have like a lot of trauma, and I can tell you that if you are drinking to self-medicate because of a past trauma, it never leads to someplace better. Like this is like a scientifically known thing. It's something you can observe. I always, when I was younger, thought that my family and I, especially my siblings, I thought that someday we would all be able to get together and be comfortable with each other, and that, we'd be able to say to each other, yeah, we had some stuff happen to us, but we all came through this okay, right? But when my brother passed away, I mean, the first thing is that, obviously the day that I had imagined, can never happen because my brother will never be there. And I also noticed that, the people that are inclined to hang on to their bad feelings about things, they were not necessarily moved by it. And those of us that were, I mean, like I said, like it's a reason why I do not drink alcohol. I think another thing that I'd just like to say, like it's been kind of a theme on this channel. I've been sort of thinking about my own way through, like how does alcohol change people? How should people think about alcohol? It's definitely one of the most dangerous substances out there for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is just toxic. Alcohol kills almost 200,000 people in the United States alone, and about 3 million people worldwide every year. So it is deadly. It definitely changes people a lot. It has so much collateral damage to the people around you. And because it is so socially acceptable to drink, um, by the time you start to think maybe there's a problem with someone in your life or maybe yourself, you've already missed a lot of the signs. You're probably already in more trouble than you think you are. So, um, some motivation for me doing this channel and for me talking about especially alcohol. It's not the only thing that I want to explore, but obviously this is a subject that has come very close to me. I titled this video and described it as a part one. This is not my only terrible experience with alcohol, but my brother is at peace now, and I feel like I can tell this story, and it's okay. I'm not ready to tell the others yet. Maybe I'll get there. So if you've had some experience like this in your life, you're not alone. It happens. I've worked very hard in my life. I have a PhD. I have a good job. I have great kids. I have, have a pretty good life overall, but not been able to escape. I've not been able to escape the effects of alcohol. And it's my story. Yeah, leave a comment, share a story. I don't know. Yeah, thanks.